Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Rebecca.
It's lunchtime. You know what that means?
It must be a Readathon lunch break.
Readathon lunch edition for sure.
Okay.
So we are coming to you in the middle of day 2 of testimony in Karen Read's trial because for logistical reasons, I can't cover the second half of the day in a podcast episode that I can then produce and release later because there's other stuff going on.
Right.
But I really wanted to get this on tape now because some important stuff just happened in the courtroom. So some quick updates first. One thing I wanted to mention is that Chief Helena Rafferty of Canton announced her retirement after day 1 of the Karen Read trial.
Wow.
Interestingly, her contract was actually up in June. She'd been renewed for 1 year, and they were going to vote on another year's renewal.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she could read the tea leaves.
Yeah, or maybe she found a better job.
Maybe she found a better
one
job.
that's not going to be as horrible.
Or perhaps she has other reasons for retiring, just as Ken Berkowitz, her predecessor, did in 2022. So that's one thing that happened. Second thing that I forgot to mention yesterday is that the readers that Hank Brennan wanted in the courtroom to read the text between John O'Keefe and Karen Read, not allowed.
Okay. Yeah.
So as expected,
seems silly.
It does seem silly. And it's theater, and Nicholas Guarino, who discovered those texts, will be the one reading them. So today
they could have added like a whole bunch of sound effects and stuff like that. It's like, remember back then when you said this?
Exactly. A couple other things. So we didn't know what was going to happen after the ARCA portion of the hearing yesterday after testimony. So I can now report that the new ARCA date is in fact going to be Monday for them to come in for an additional voir dire.
Right. Friday didn't work for some reason.
Friday didn't work for Dr. Wolf. And then Bev Canoni was like, but can he come tomorrow? Aren't they only in Pennsylvania?
Just over in Pennsylvania. Look at a map, Bev.
Only in Pennsylvania.
If you can't make Friday, why'd you think Thursday afternoon would be more convenient?
Right.
Because the Friday thing is, all right, whatever.
She's also issued an order for them to produce disclosure of their communications with the defense team.
Why didn't they just do that in the first place?
I don't know. But
why are they? Yeah, all right.
What's interesting, though, is Alisi correctly pointed out that Michael Morrissey, the reason he can't provide his texts is because he says they auto-delete from his phone within 30 days.
What phone is that?
His personal, I don't know, his phone. But these guys are being expected to produce actual text of texts that were from more than 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So, and finally, this morning started with a little bit of drama in the courtroom. The defense got up and said they were basically given a new PowerPoint that had hundreds of text messages on it. They've
never seen before. Trial 2.
They hadn't seen this PowerPoint before, for sure.
Right.
And I'll just tell you, Hank would lose his shit if the defense did this. He'd call them out on non-reciprocal discovery or violations thereof. He'd call them out on trial by ambush. He basically said this was intended for Guarino's testimony because before he had to go back and forth between call logs and texts, and this was just one presentation that showed both. And Elizabeth Little said, yeah, but the problem is the texts here aren't according to Cellbrite data. We don't know where they're from. So, yeah.
He's trying to say that this organizes it in a easier way for everybody to follow. But the defense says, well, you're not actually showing the actual text here. You're showing representations of the text. And
fun fact, he actually had a lot of objection to the defense putting up chalks to make it easier for the witness to follow their own testimony.
Oh, are you saying they don't always negotiate in good faith here?
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Finally, I wanted to mention about today's testimony that is an important observation. Judge Canoni shut down immediately when the big witness we're about to talk about attempted to bring up her so-called harassment. She shut it down immediately.
Okay.
She shut down the witness being able to talk about it.
Harassment by the public and everybody.
She never did this in the first trial. She allowed Kerry Roberts, she allowed Jen McCabe to opine on how their lives had been ruined. Jen McCabe's daughter.
There was no previous motion against that, between trials or objections at the time. So she's just the judge is just saying at this point, that's not relevant.
They've decided that they can't talk about that in these contexts in this trial.
Okay.
And she actually shut it down, which is great. Now, what happens is the lawyer has to be the one to open the door. So, Jackson would have to be the one to open the door for her to be able to talk about it, and then it could come
Have you been harassed? Yeah.
Exactly.
All
okay.
Right.
So, big witness today, Kerry Roberts back on the stand for more direct examination and then for cross-examination with Alan Jackson, which is where the big news happened.
Okay, so I know her as one of the 3 people in the car with Karen and Jen McCabe, the morning of the incident, they drove and found John O'Keefe's body on the lawn at 34 Fairview.
In Kerry Roberts' car.
In Kerry Roberts' car she was driving.
Yes.
Okay.
Karen Reed apparently called Kerry Roberts around 5 a.m., said John never came home.
Right.
Kerry Roberts said something like, I think he's dead. And then Karen went to Jen McCabe's house. Kerry Roberts went to Jen McCabe's house. They followed Jen McCabe back to John's house. Jen McCabe left her car there. This is an important detail. And then the three of them all drove around and then to 34 Fairview, where they discovered John's body.
Because that's where they say that Karen backed out and actually broke the
not
tail
at that
end.
time.
No, not at that time.
That was earlier.
Okay, rewind that. My bad. Sorry about that. I'll go back and pretend like I didn't just say that. Okay.
Karen
so she's important because she's there to corroborate Commonwealth evidence and testimony about what happened that morning.
Right.
And then the time afterwards.
Right.
Okay.
To be clear, Karen Reed backed into John O'Keefe's car when she was leaving his house earlier to go to Jen McCabe's house. Okay. All right. So one of the things that Kerry Roberts said on her direct examination is that when she followed Karen Reed back to John's house, they were walking into John's house and she noticed a square piece missing from the middle. This is exactly what she said. One piece missing from the middle of Karen Reed's taillight.
Okay. The rest of it there. But
and she says she remembers that because there was a piece of metal kind of sticking out and she pointed out that somebody could catch their jacket on it. So that's her very clear memory.
Okay.
Another thing she says is that when she saw John O'Keefe's body, his whole head was covered with snow. When she wiped the snow aside, his left eye was huge and it looked like something had happened to him, is what she said. It sounded like
she was about to look like somebody punched him.
I think she was going to say, look, like he'd been in a fight.
Been in a fight, which is what everybody says.
Right.
Yeah. And then pulls back on that. All right.
That's right. So Kerry then says that she was doing chest compressions while Karen was doing mouth to mouth. And in this testimony for the first time, she says that at some point, Jen McCabe took over chest compressions. I don't believe she's ever said before. And that does seem to counter Jen's 911 call where she says Kerry is doing chest compressions.
Right.
But I think what she's asserting is that Jen took over chest compressions after 911 had been called. I'm not certain.
Okay, so some confusion about in the chaos of who's doing what. All right.
Importantly, Kerry says that there was no snow under John O'Keefe's body when they took him away, but she saw his phone lying there and she went and picked it up. Hank Brennan asked her many, many times if the phone was in your pocket at this time, because she says she put it in her pocket. Was it still in your pocket? Was it still in your pocket? Was your car warm when you got back into your car? What I believe he's trying to establish is A, some steps on John's phone, B, the temperature of the phone, which came up in opening arguments that the temperature of the phone was going to be brought into evidence, proving that he had or hadn't been on the lawn for a long period of time.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
So I think he's trying to establish the phone would have warmed up in Kerry's warm car. All right. So Kerry Roberts says that she didn't talk to Jen McCabe much. They weren't really friends before John O'Keefe died, but they've become very close after that. They also became close because a couple days after the incident, they made a timeline together of everything they remembered. This comes up later.
Okay.
Put a pin in that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have negative feelings in particular toward Kerry Roberts or about Kerry Roberts. She really seems to be somebody who was asked to come into this, volunteered to come into it, and then frankly may have been used.
Right, because she wasn't at the party, as far as we know.
She was not at the party.
She's just a acquaintance of all the people who were involved, so she's a witness.
Right.
All right.
She also is part of this very incestuous circle. She has a very friendly relationship with Canton police officer Michael Lank, who was one of the first responders in the scene, and she spoke to him on the scene. The next day, the 29th, she says, with Jen McCabe and Jen McCabe's kids in the car, she drove to John O'Keefe's house, where her son and one of Jen McCabe's kids was dropped off because John O'Keefe's nephew was there and they were friends. And then she drove with Jen McCabe to Michael Lank's house, where Jen McCabe went into the bathroom. This came up during Jen McCabe's testimony last time. I don't remember. This was the thing they complained that Lally had prepped her to say, that she went into the bathroom at Lank's house and that she said at this time, though, that they never went by 34 Fairview, which I believe was part of Jen McCabe's testimony, was that they also drove by 34 Fairview, but she insists they did not.
Okay.
Kerry says that Karen asked Jen and her to say a prayer in the back of a police car. Brennan showed Kerry Roberts the entire video. Like, we were forced to watch this quiet entire video of when they arrived, then when first responders arrived. You could see chest compressions in the background. You can hear Karen screaming, and then you see John being taken away. Carrie's not in the frame for some of it, and she says, I don't know where I was during that. But Aidan Carney is in the courtroom, and he pointed out, which I thought was interesting, was that it seems like Sergeant Good, who was one of the first responders, put Karen Read in the back of his car at 6:26 in the morning, with Jen McCabe standing outside talking to another cop. And Jen McCabe had claimed she was inside that car at 6:24, and that's when Karen told her to Google how long to die in the snow. So if this is Good's car that she was put into at 6:26, it proves they weren't in the car together when Jen McCabe says they were.
Okay.
All right. Cross-examination.
All right.
I will just say this started a little bit like, I'm like, where is he going with this? Where is he going with this? But the first thing that Kerry Roberts revealed that was interesting is that Jackson asked her, how many times have you spoken with somebody at the DA's office? Guess how many times she said?
I like a half dozen times would seem about right.
At least 50.
50 times?
Right.
Somebody. So, okay.
This is when she tried to bring up, because I was being objection.
Okay.
And then, yes. So that she tried to bring in the reason for all those phone calls.
So she's not saying that she went over her testimony 50 times. She's saying that she contacted people at the DA's office for different reasons.
They were in contact. And the three people she mentioned in particular, well, four actually, Nelson, who is the witness victim's advocate.
Okay, sure.
Buchanan, who is a state trooper.
Yeah, sure.
Tully, who's a state trooper. And Michael Morrissey himself.
Talked to the DA himself.
Several times.
Got the big guy on the phone.
Talked and texted.
Texted
and texted.
the
Lots
DA.
of texts, yes.
Lots of texts.
Right.
That's something.
Right. So she said that she met him, phoned him, got voicemail from him, and texted with him frequently. And that's when she again tried to bring up the harassment. Objection. Sustained. All right. So she had other meetings with witnesses in the DA, with the witness advocate and the DA. The logistics of her relationship with Buchanan was phones, meetings, and texts. How many times has she communicated with Buchanan? At least 20. So she met with Brennan about her testimony in the last trial, sometime in the last couple of weeks. The meeting was in the DA's office. There was more than one meeting about this. Nelson was there, the advocate. Tully, Lally, Brennan's assistant, and ADA McLaughlin were all there. So they showed her video of her prior testimony. And they basically said, we want to review it. And she says they didn't talk about what she was going to say today. Okay, which is, I don't know, it doesn't sound like the kind of preparation that normally happens, but that's what she said. She also said during cross that Jen called 911 while standing outside of her, Kerry's SUV. Now, what you might remember is that Jen's 911 call was picked up on audio by Karen's open cell phone line to John O'Keefe's voicemail.
Right. So Karen put her phone down, but it didn't disconnect, so it's still recording.
On the back seat of the car.
It's almost like having a tape recorder going in the back seat of the car while Jen is alone in the front seat.
That's right.
While all this chaos is going on.
That's right. And you actually hear like windshield wipers and stuff in the background. Now, Kerry Roberts insists that that phone call was made when Jen was outside of the car, standing behind the open tailgate. I believe that that is not true, whether she remembers it wrong or not, because you don't hear any wind in that call. And on all the other audio of this incident that's outside, you hear this constant wind. It was a blizzard, a legitimate blizzard, okay? So Jackson then wanted to play audio of the first responders' arrival. He played video again of the first responders' arrival and made her concentrate on the audio. She says she couldn't tell what was happening in the audio, but what was actually happening in the audio was that they arrived, the first responders arrived, and Seraph, the cop, said to Karen Read what happened, and she said, my boyfriend never came home, and he's lying over there, something along those lines. But she says she couldn't hear that. Interestingly, she also says that she heard Karen say again and again and again, could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? Could I have hit him? Not, I hit him, I hit him.
Okay.
All right. So, interestingly, she met with the cops later that day. She says she didn't tell the cops about the cracked Karen Read taillight, the missing piece on the taillight that Karen Read had pointed out to her. And she didn't tell them about Karen Read calling her at 5 a.m. and saying he's dead. because she says she didn't want to get anyone in trouble at that time.
Okay.
That's what she says.
Okay, sure.
She was asked, did Jen McCabe call you just before your interview with the cops on the 29th? Did you text during that interview? She said, no, I wouldn't have done that. And then he says, Jackson says, would it help your recollection if I showed you call logs that coincide with the police notes of your interview? And she's like, sure, show them to me. And then she looked at them and she said, no, I still don't recall that. But she did have a phone call with Jen McCabe right before her interview, and there were texts exchanged with Jen McCabe at the time of the interview. Okay. That did happen, but she doesn't recall them happening. 3 days later, February 1st, she has her second interview with state police. Guess where that interview took place?
Police station?
Jen McCabe's house.
Jen McCabe's house. All right.
Why was she at Jen McCabe's house?
Let me guess. Because the two of them were getting together to get their story straight or something like that.
Well, she says that for Peggy O'Keefe's benefit, John O'Keefe's mother's benefit, they were making a timeline of everything that happened the morning of January 29th. They were making that timeline. It was, and then he asked her, Jackson asked her. So it was basically like, she said this happened, and then it sparked something in your memory, and then you said this happened, and then you created this timeline together. And she said, yes. He said, who else was there? She said, Jen McCabe's sister. Not Brian Albert's wife, her other sister. Okay?
Okay.
At that time, the state police show up while they're creating this timeline, and they interview Kerry Roberts at Jen McCabe's house. During that interview, Jen McCabe texts her text group, which includes Brian Albert and all the other people, and said, quote, she's telling them everything, all the stuff.
Telling them everything, all the stuff. All right.
All right. Jackson asked Kerry if she was aware that Jen McCabe was listening into her interview. She said no, she wasn't listening in. And then he asked her if she's aware of that text message in which her interview with the police is talked about. She said, I'm not aware of that, which I call BS on because it was a big topic at the previous trial.
Okay.
There's no way she didn't know about it, but she says she wasn't aware of it. Later that day, Kerry Roberts says she talked to Proctor because Proctor was on the phone with Jen McCabe. She was still with Jen McCabe, and she asked to speak to Proctor, at which point she told Proctor the stuff that she then, quote, either remembered or felt like saying. That, for instance, Karen Reef's taillight had a piece missing from it or was cracked. All right? So she did that in Jen McCabe's presence again. This all comes into play. It's all very important.
Okay.
Jackson then asks Roberts, how frequently do you speak to Jen McCabe? She says, I speak to her all the time.
Okay.
When was the last time you spoke to Jen McCabe? Guess what she said?
No idea.
This morning.
This morning. Okay.
Today.
Is that like bad? I mean,
she called her to wish her good luck today.
Okay. I mean, they're not like sequestered from each other, right? They're not
sequestered from each other, a point that Brennan made up in his redirect. However, this comes into play because Kerry Roberts is a key witness, allegedly, had been a key witness to Karen Reed asking Jen McCabe to Google how long it takes to die in the snow in the back of that police car when they were all sitting there.
So is the pattern here, the growing implication is that Kerry has been unduly influenced by Jen?
Yes.
That Jen has been incepting these ideas, these little bits of testimony into Kerry.
Yes.
So Kerry is not a bad actor.
Yes.
But she is spitting out stuff that has been, and she thinks she's acting in good faith, but she is like carrying Jen's water on all these things.
It seems like that could be the case. So let me tell you how this comes into play. It's very important. Kerry Roberts testified in front of the Karen Reed grand jury for this case, the state's case.
The state grand jury.
Exactly 3 years ago this week.
Okay.
April 26th of 2022. At that grand jury, by the way, she was sitting in the anteroom with her husband, Jen McCabe, and Jen McCabe's husband before she was called in to testify.
Okay, they're all sitting together.
She was asked by Lally in front of the grand jury, what, if anything, can you say, I'm paraphrasing, but the last part I'm not paraphrasing, what, if anything, can you tell us about what happened or statements made by Karen Reed in the back of that police car that you heard?
That you heard.
He literally said that you heard.
Directly. Okay.
She said, quote, she asked Jen McCabe to Google hypothermia, how long - Google hypothermia in the back of that police car.
Okay.
So she said that she heard it.
She heard Karen say those words.
In front of the grand jury.
Okay.
Except that's not true, she's now saying. She never heard Karen say that. And when asked by Jackson, so that wasn't true, right? She says yes. So essentially she admitted to lying in front of the grand jury, but then she later asserted that it was a mistake. She misunderstood the question.
Okay.
When she somehow didn't hear the "that you heard" part. She was just saying, quote, what happened that morning.
She wasn't trying to obfuscate, she's saying, or mislead, but she answered in a way that was incorrect.
And he said, how did you know what happened that morning with regard to this search that you then testified to in front of the grand jury? How did you know that it happened? And she said, from the timeline.
The timeline they put together.
From the timeline they put together.
She and Jen put together.
This is what I think is the most important thing to have been revealed today. Not that she lied in front of the grand jury. I think they all did, or they all changed their stories along the way.
One can be mistaken. Yeah.
Or one could be untruthful, or one could be influenced.
Yep.
What this reveals, in my opinion, is that Jen thought that Google search was important enough to include on the timeline. She, I believed that was going to be a problem. So she incepted this idea that Karen Reed asked her to make this search.
Because it is the one search that she also deleted.
No, the 2:27 a.m. one is the one search that she also deleted.
Sorry.
The 6:24 in the morning-ish one was intact.
Okay.
The 2:27 a.m. search, which, by the way, was just a couple of minutes after Brian Higgins and Brian Albert talked to each other on the phone at the police station. That's the one search out of almost 5,000 searches on her phone that was deleted. I think what this could indicate is that she knew that search was going to be a problem. So she inserted this idea that Karen Reed asked for this search in the back of the police car. She put it on the timeline, and to Kerry Roberts, that became what happened that morning. It was a very, very interesting moment. Everybody sort of had this moment, I think, of like, oh, what this is leading to is that Jen has been shaping your view of this case since day one. All right? Yeah,
there seems to be a lot of evidence.
Right.
Circumstantial or not, that seems to be what Jen has been doing.
It was really, really interesting.
And it's important because Kerry's seen as a fairly credible witness because she doesn't have these same kinds of connections
she does.
To the McAlbert, but she wasn't at the party.
Right.
And although she's friends, she doesn't have a lot on the line that like these other people do. So in a lot of ways, she's seen as credible in a different way.
Right. Well, she's seen as credible in a different way because she wasn't drunk that night at the thing. And because what people say about her is, they even got this person involved in the quote conspiracy.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that I think thinks that Karen did it, or at least at one point thought that Karen did it. And what it really appears to have happened is that she was told stuff that then became truth to her.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Which I think happened to a lot of people in this case, including some of the first responders, the people who say they remember hearing Karen say, I hit him. Somebody said that she said that, and that became part of their memories. That's a very, I think, plausible explanation for some of that. All right. So on redirect, she then says that she saw pieces of Karen's taillight missing.
Pieces.
She definitely
Plural,
said piece multiple times earlier. Now she's saying pieces. Brennan also questioned her about the shoes thing. Do you know about the shoes quote evidence?
About John's shoe?
No, about the shoes in John O'Keefe's house. Do you know about this evidence, this supposed evidence?
I guess it was like the shoe. You had to take the shoes off.
Yes.
When he came in, and so that it was evidence that Karen knew John was dead because she didn't take her shoes off.
Right. So this comes up again. Brennan asked, "How do you remember taking your shoes off?" And she looked so scared. She's like, "You would never wear your shoes in John's house. He was a freak about it. You would never do it." Apparently, John's parents now live in his house, and now you are allowed to wear your shoes in the house. But she seemed, John, by the way, sounded like a real uptight dude because she was like, no. I swear, Kevin, she it looked like she was afraid, like remembering like a fear moment. She's like, no, you never wore shoes in John's house. But then she remembers that Karen went right in with her shoes, which they're going to bring up again. And it's very, very silly. So she said, now she's saying pieces were missing. And Brennan had this one funny slip that I want to mention. He said, when you were being interviewed by law enforcement. So on On recross, Jackson then got her to assert again that she said this thing in front of the grand jury that wasn't true. And she's saying now, I obviously misunderstood the question, got the question wrong. And then he said, why did you in the middle of your Google asking her to Google hypothermia say, and how long, before saying again, asking her to Google hypothermia? And she said, I don't know why I said that. I do. Anyway, so that's what happened with the Kerry Roberts testimony today.
Wow.
Up next is Peggy O'Keefe, who...
John's mother,
who I will be paying attention to, and we will be talking about in a future edition of this show, probably Friday, because tomorrow is a wild day for us personally, or for me personally. But that was kind of some interesting, new, in my opinion, revelatory stuff that happened on the stand today.
Wow. All right. That is a pretty comprehensive readathon for half a day of testimony.
Yeah, it was really something. All right, Kevin, thank you for joining me for this lunchtime edition of this podcast.
Partners in Crime Media.